Continuing on our strategic exercise, we identified three main areas where we see significant growth in the next 10 to 15 years. And these areas are air transportation, autonomous systems, and small satellites. Air transportation from an economical perspective is probably the most significant, the largest, and the reason is because we foresee growth in air traffic demand of about a factor of two. We foresee that air traffic demand is going to double or perhaps triple by the middle of this century. What that really means is that the infrastructure that we've developed in the last 50, 60 years is going to have to be doubled in size potentially in the next 10, 20 years. And that demand is not going to come from developed nations, like we are potentially going to see some increased demand here and in Europe, but most of the demand is going to come from the developing world. And there are going to be a lot of aircraft and a lot of new vehicles that need to be developed, and a lot of infrastructure needs to be developed in the next 20 years. So that's one area, and the challenges within this area are that on one side we have an increased demand for air transportation, and on the other side we have strong environmental constraints. It turns out that aerospace, even though only contributes 5% to greenhouse emissions, is the fastest growing sector. And not only the fastest growing sector, but the sector for which finding a replacement or an alternative to hydrocarbons is very difficult. So we have the challenge of environmental impacts, and we also have the challenge of increasing costs of energy. So the only way we are going to resolve this challenge, or this conundrum, is by better aircraft, better technology, better operations. So that's in the field of air transportation. For autonomous systems, again, it's becoming apparent that they are becoming increasingly more popular. Within aerospace, we not only see autonomous systems like drones, which are perhaps the more visible to most people, but we see an increase of autonomy in areas such as manufacturing. One of the big challenges in manufacturing is that we've seen that the car industry or the construction of cars is a process which is highly automated. We all seen these robots acting on the vehicles as they move down the line. The main difference is that building aircraft is very different in the way that in a line you can potentially be building about 1,000 vehicles a day. Probably the most productive aircraft lines will produce one vehicle a day, which means that you cannot really do or use the same levels of automation. You really need to use automation in a different way, and that's again of great interest to us. And another area where autonomy and automation is very important is in space exploration. We all heard of projects for going to Mars and for exploring the solar system and beyond. And it makes only sense in this day and age to use robots and to use autonomous exploration. Even if you want to send humans, it probably makes sense to send robots ahead of time to create some infrastructure and to help the whole process. And then another area where we see a lot of growth, and which was identified in our strategic plan, was that of small satellites. Again, satellites are very important for our everyday life. They are important for communications, they are important for GPS, weather forecast, agricultural monitoring, etc., etc. But one of the things that's happening is that the ability to miniaturize systems and sensors is allowing us to do the same functions that larger satellites, the same functions where larger satellites were needed with much smaller satellites. And what that really means is that it is a lot cheaper and cost-effective to really launch these smaller vehicles. one can think of, rather than sending a bigger satellite, sending a smaller one, or perhaps another thing one can think of is, instead of sending a larger satellite, why not sending 10, 20 or 30 smaller ones and create a constellation that would provide a much more global coverage. So again, this is another area where our department is leading. We have partnerships with Lincoln Labs, which are very effective, and also with industry. And two key technologies that are very important in this domain, and where we think we have unique capability, is the space propulsion as well as optical communications. And both are very important for the field of small satellites.